got caught. I got caught.
He's everywhere.
I'm kidding. This is a casual club. Now, Tanya, see what you're doing right now? Tanya started that. Way back when, I said, we'd like to be relaxed until Tanya raises up her wine glass and says, I am. And we've agreed to be a relaxed club. Someplace where people can drop in, have fun, you know, have a glass of wine or whatever, or if it's Wade, Irish Death. Or if it's John Thomas, it's Alberta Rye. There's Fred.
Good evening.
Good evening, Fred. How are you, sir? Oh,
I'm good.
well, there's Cynthia. Hi, Cynthia.
Hello.
Can't see my hand. There you are. I changed my camera angle today. I think it's better. Whoa. Feedback. Who's that? Okay. This is great right now, but as more people sign on, you're all going to start shrinking.
Oh, good. I've been trying to shrink.
Ouch. What's that? Okay. What happened?
Distinctive sound. No.
Whoa.
It's not in my room.
Sounds like a fire alarm.
Yeah. All right. This is good. We're probably going to, we'll probably get, we could approach 15 to 16 people tonight at this rate. This is great. Usually we have Troy, John Thomas. We had Dan Foley at our board, sit in our board meeting last week. That was fun to have him be on for the first time. So we'll just give everybody a few minutes. Greg and Mary, how is the conference planning going?
Hey, Greg's mic is.
Yeah, he's got his mic off.
I think somebody's doorbell's ringing. That's what it sounds. That's what my doorbell sounds like.
15 or 325, I forgot. Signed up today and paid.
As of today,
80 signed up but haven't paid.
80 signed up already. I mean, but you have. Hi, Pam. How are you?
How you doing?
Good. There's Jerry.
Bring my wine in.
Can you hear us, Jerry?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We certainly can. That's great. Pamela, did you read your emails recently? I sent you one from a Wash Rag newsletter where they are putting out $500 grants to encourage clubs. Yeah. And I don't know what the string is, but to encourage clubs to get involved in water and sanitation projects.
That's wonderful.
So it's got a link in it, so check it out, because I think it's one of those things where if you've got a project started or ready to go, they'll throw $500 in to help you increase it.
That's exciting. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
I will do that.
Oh, there's Jerry. I can see you now, sir. And Chuck Pruitt's, there he is. Hi, Chuck.
Am I sideways?
Nope, you're all, let's see. Nope. Jerry, you're okay now. You're fine.
I'm using my iPhone here.
Oh, okay. So we have 3, 6, 9, 11. Good. Okay.
Yeah, we got 11.
Yep. I was shooting for 15 tonight. Let's see. So Troy's not here yet. John Thomas is not here yet. And there are usuals. So Jerry, how are you, sir?
Very well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good to have you with us tonight. And Chuck, I want to thank you for your returning that mini survey already.
Okay.
And I also got one from Tanya Sterling, who is from the Victoria area. And it was interesting. Her comments and yours were very parallel. For those of you who are on, the survey's not done yet, but we did a 4-question club survey to kind of work towards a mission vision for the club. And my opinion is the same as both Chuck's and Tanya Sterling's was at this point is we're going to start, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I'm going to start mining other club websites, and I may ask once this gets through, I may ask other members of the club to do the same. Clubs around you. and find out what community projects they have going, and get sort of an advanced schedule. And we're talking about maybe a hands-on project or even a fundraiser. But go out and get involved with theirs, let them know who we are, become visible, and then in turn, when we're ready, we can solicit their assistance for us. So far, that's the Chuck's and Tanya Sterling's, in my opinion. We'll see how the rest of the survey comes in.
I wasn't actually talking about fundraising. One of the problems I had with my former club was that, people didn't want to put their own money into the charity. It's sort of a re-gifting program. They go out and get other people to give them money, and then they give that money away to other groups. And that's not what I had in mind.
Okay, but you meant more. Did you mean more hands-on community work?
I mean, that's what that's what I would like to.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, and I've got an idea how to do that, but I want to wait until all the surveys are in. What I may do is solicit members from around our club and ask each of them within an area to mine the websites of the clubs within their area and see what community projects are coming up and see how we can get involved. Okay, it is now, well, I guess I can wait a couple more minutes. I'm surprised I don't have Troy and John on here yet. They're our regulars. But we'll give them a couple more. Anybody have anything new they want to throw out, or anything that's been going on that they want to share?
I was at Vashon Island Rotary today.
Oh yeah,
Bill, and gave the presentation on Shillong, and it was very well received. And they talked about community projects, but I can't remember exactly what they're doing, so I'm going to get a hold of them and find out.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, Pamela has been looking for funding for what the board has tentatively supported is a project in Shillong, India, a wash project in a school there, and she has been very successful so far. I believe Parkland Spanaway, we don't know how much, but they're on board. Vashon looks like they're going to provide support. And what'll be really nice for this club, Pamela's written this kind of a grant before, we can get involved in an international grant, only having to put in 100 or 2 ourselves, but maybe have $10,000 to $15,000 total from other clubs that we can then leverage into a full-blown grant, a global grant. So it's not firm yet, and Fred's been working on a budget. He and I have been going back and forth on that. And once we have that done and the board approves, then at one of our next meetings, maybe the April 5th meeting, we'll present that budget to the membership. And once we get that approval, Pamela, then I think we can then ask for a formal vote on the project.
Sounds good. They were very interested in e-Rotary. They had a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Well, we're getting going. We're in our first quarter, and the faithful are still here, and I'm really liking to see Tanya here. I know this is late for her, and Jerry's back again. So it's 7:05, and let's get started, and the others can join in. So the first thing I want to do is I was going to remind everyone about the conference, but I think what I'm going to do is ask Mary to remind us about the conference, and then we'll move right into Sally Porter Smith to talk about the conference project. So Mary, do you want to start?
Sure. Are we unmuted?
Yes, you are unmuted.
And I may have Greg chime in too. He knows more stats, but everything's going well. The sign up is going well. So far, we have 300 and how many, Greg?
15 paid.
Yeah.
Great.
And 80 registered but not paid.
So that part's going well. And the thing that we really tried to do this year was listen to what the Rotarians wanted for training and speakers. And we have some new classes that have not been offered before that should really help with the training. We have 5 speakers that are phenomenal. And then our opening ceremony is going to be at the LeMay Car Museum Friday evening. Do you want to add anything, Greg?
Yeah, the 5 speakers we're going to have are just really world-class speakers. One of them is coming from New Zealand, and we've heard them all, and they're just going to be the best speakers that you've ever heard at a district conference, I believe.
So there's a lot going on, and the day before the conference, Thursday, May 3rd, for the first time in a very long time, we're going to have a district-wide service project, and I'm going to let Sally jump in and tell you a little more about that.
Okay.
Bill, is it all right if I share the screen?
You do whatever you would like to do, Sally.
Perfect. Thank you. So Mary and Greg have talked about the conference, and we're really going to talk about the district-wide conference on May 3rd. When Mary and Greg approached District Governor Carroll, he had some specific requests for them. And Mary, would you?
For the conference or for the service project?
For the service project.
Okay, the service project, since this is the first one we have done that's involved food packing district-wide, we wanted to start out kind of small and build it. So what we're doing is
How'd that work?
yeah, I know. How did that happen? We're only packing 50,000 meals. So we wanted to start small, right? Yeah. And it's pretty exciting what we're doing. The meals actually cost 25 cents each. They have a shelf life of 2 years. And we need 350 people, which Sally will go into. But it's pretty exciting what we're doing. It's going to be at the Hotel Murano, same place as a conference. So we're hoping to get a lot of participation, and it's going back into the local community per Tom Carroll's request.
And what our hope is that this will be a prototype, that if it's successful and other annual conferences want to do something similar, that they would have a conference where Rotarians from throughout the district would come together and support that service project that may only have the benefit of the conference local community, but it's neighbor to neighbor, Rotarian, family, friends, helping one another. And so the packing of the meals, I'm going to show you a PowerPoint, and I want you to know that Bill will be sharing it with you. So the links and all the information you will have, so please don't feel you have to print screen or write anything down. You'll have the information. But it happens on registration day, May 3rd. The first shift starts at 9:40. And we want to give you a bird's eye view of how it works. This is a national project, and later in the presentation, I'll give you a link to Des Moines, Iowa, brought together 8 clubs, and they packed over 73,000 meals. The outreach program has received 1,000 points of stars from President Obama and President Bush. It was checked out. Mary and I have been training in it. We were up in Seattle in December. They packed 73,000 meals in one day. And basically, the bird's eye view, you are looking at an assembly line. And one of the ways that your club can participate is to volunteer, to work on May 3rd. You can include your spouse, your partner, your family, your friends, students, colleagues. We are going out to different clubs, and a number of organizations have service, and so businesses are saying, can we participate? It's very easy to sign up. The link is there, And literally, you go to this volunteer sign-up sheet that is online. You click on the workstation, the time, and it will guide you right through, and then you'll get confirmation emails. And so it's pretty straightforward. We also, your club can participate by helping us raise some money for the project. We need $13,000 to buy the food. And we have raised so far $9,690, and we've received 6,000 of it as of today. And the information is simple. You let Mary and I know what you want to contribute. You make your payables to Lakewood Rotary with a note that's for the service project, and we will take care of the rest for you.
And to give you just some information, if you were to go and work 1 hour, volunteer for 1 hour, the cost of the food that you would be able to pack is going to be about $20. So that might give you a good feel if, and a lot of the Rotary clubs, some of the people are actually donating individually. Some of the clubs are donating as a club. So there's all different kinds of ways. The one other thing I want to mention is we encourage you to invite potential Rotary members, because this is a great service project, great hands-on, and it'll give them a good feeling for what it's all about.
I've included the contact information, and more information is on the district webpage. Every single thing that we've talked about here is there, but not in the PowerPoint. I would like to say that we really feel confident in this project, and I encourage you to watch the YouTube. 250 Rotarians from 8 Des Moines Rotary clubs, Des Moines, Iowa, met on one day, and they packed 50,000 mac and cheese meals. In Seattle, we saw 73,000 meals packed. It's a very efficient project. I've also included in your packet information about who are the hungry in Pierce County. I am not going to go through this, but I think one of the most telling statistics is that in 2016, 135,000 children and teens in Pierce County were reported enrolled through their public schools in the free and reduced lunch programs. The food insecurity in Pierce County is great, with children, working poor, and seniors making up the largest portion of people using food programs. But I leave that for you to look at. I wanted to open it up now. Any questions that you might have for Mary, myself, or Greg?
Please, anyone else have I have some questions, but I want others to go first.
I'd like to ask, what kind of food can you give people for 25 cents?
That's interesting. When we first looked at this, we're thinking 25 cents a meal. How can that possibly be? But it is accurate, and it's very nutritious. They have a lot of protein in it. We have 5 different choices of meals, and I think we're going to choose 2 of them, probably the mac and cheese and the oatmeal with apple cinnamon, I believe it is.
And I would just add that before we started this project, we went to the Emergency Food Network and we went to Nourish, which are probably the largest distributors of food to pantries. And we showed them the products package, and we said, would you have a need for this? And they said, absolutely. The package serves 6 meals, and all it requires is boiling water. And
Hey, I could do that.
yes, Greg, you could. And what they said is it would be perfect for backpack programs because it's something you could put in. It's lightweight. It would be great for transitional housing, like in a hotel where a family has had some kind of emergency. They're in temporary housing. They have a microwave in the motel. They can use that. it would also be tremendously valuable to the Salvation Army, who is serving homeless, and to mobile food banks who are also serving homeless. So I feel really confident that the food that we will be packaging will be immediately well used. Rotary clubs can choose if they have a favorite food program, they can let us know, and we will work to make sure that proportionately it is distributed to that food pantry if it's not covered through either Emergency Food Network or the Nourish program.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, one of mine is how many meals would be distributed, say, per person or per family? Is there going to be a limit?
You know, Bill, that would be interesting because the way Emergency Food Network distributes the food is they do it almost as if it was a commodity. So they divide it up and they distribute food pantries based on the population and the need. So for instance, I'm going to talk about the mobile food bank that goes to areas that don't have food banks. The Bethel School District is an area that's well served by them. Puyallup is, Tillicum. Well, there's 10 sites, including Key Peninsula. They will distribute the meal packages. It's possible that people would choose to use the product up depending on the donation by the club, because we're going to distribute to areas based on which clubs have given money.
Okay.
So Gig Harbor has already contributed over $1,800 so far. So we want to make sure that if your Rotary Club gave, we want to make sure that your community benefits. And so it'll be distributed. But with 50,000, it has to go over 107 food pantries, 17 mobile sites, plus any that comes. So we're expecting like the mobile bank for Nourish to get about 5,000 meals. So I can't tell you how many.
I mean, 50,000 sounds like a lot, but when you divide it out among all of these needs, it isn't such a great number.
No, but the distribution sounds fine. I mean, if
Yeah.
you get 5,000 into the mobile banks, that's really good.
Yeah.
Can the exchange students participate, or will they not be there?
Yes, please. We'd love them to be there.
So we have invited them, and what we have heard is that they will not have chaperones until about 4:30 on Thursday afternoon. Okay. So if any of the local exchange students want to participate, we would more than love to have them, any of them for that matter.
Okay.
We just know that the youth leaders felt it was challenging to get enough chaperones in place at that time.
Okay,
Now,
but those of us who have to bring a student anyway, we
would love it.
Be their chaperone, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we have families who are bringing 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds. And it's, you know, it's repetitive, it's real easy work. If there are seniors who need to sit down, we will definitely find a job for them. And I wasn't talking about you, Bill. So anyway.
Hey, Richard, they're not being nice.
We would love to have the youth join us.
Okay, I'll make a pitch for that. Last question for me is, have you contacted all the clubs in the district and at least sent them this PowerPoint and asked their, because I know you can't get to all 90 clubs, but have you thought about sending the PowerPoint with a note to each club president to try to see if this can be on their agenda?
We have not yet. We have on the district conference website, we wanted to start with Pierce County and the closest neighbors because it has the most immediate benefit, but we are going to need volunteers from everywhere.
And we are sending out a district-wide notice to everyone, and we'll include that PowerPoint because I think it's helpful.
I would love I would love to hear from the people here if that PowerPoint answered the kind of questions. I think that I need to include a picture of the food so people can visualize it, the packet and a little information. I get that question, so I can add that, but any feedback you give us, we'll incorporate before we send out, because we truly want people to understand the project. We're really excited by it.
I think for me anyway, I saw the assembly line, but what I didn't see was that finished project, product. So if somebody was there holding up, and said, this is the meal, and whether it's a one-person meal or two-person, whatever, but it might help visualize, what it is people are going to be doing.
We'd be glad to.
Okay. Any other questions?
If I understand correctly, what you're going to be doing is putting 6 packets of food into a little box.
It's actually 6 meals in one bag, and the bag is about this big, and so there's 6 meals in each bag, and then the bags go into a box. And I will send you that bird's eye view. Actually has all the process, and I will send it to Bill so you can see all the steps and you can see it from start to finish.
The other thing we're going to include is a little label. It may say something like packed with care by Rotarians or something, so that we get a little bit more coverage out there.
Did that answer your question?
Well, it just goes back to, I think we're all trying to visualize what you're doing, and seeing the end product would be very helpful.
We will send that to you.
So if you know what a gallon size Ziploc bag is, I believe it's maybe a little smaller than that, Sally. I'm trying to remember.
It's about
so
that
the
size.
6 meals will fit in. It's not a Ziploc because we seal it, but it's like that size. And then we put labels on them. We stack them, we put them in boxes, and the labels are on the boxes where they go and what the contents are. And then the Emergency Food Network is going to be picking them up for us.
Cool.
And then people would go to a food bank, and that one of the items they could pick up would be a bag of 6.
Yes, and then we'll also do it for the students who are on free and reduced lunch. They will have on the weekends, usually on the Friday, then they get their food to take home for the weekend, and this would be a perfect item for that.
And
they would get breakfast and lunch with.
Yes. Yes.
Correct. And it is so lightweight, and it has a nutritional life for 2 years. We don't anticipate it being on the shelf for that long.
No.
I really like the idea of the mobile food bank for something like this.
Yeah.
I just hope that the people who receive them will have the ability to, because I mean, there's a lot of people in the streets and they're not going to have an opportunity to use this product. I don't know where they would go to, be able to have access to be able to boil it or microwave it.
So Bill, I'm going to speak with a voice of authority.
Okay.
Because I have been a volunteer at the Tillicum Food Bank, which is the mobile bank. It is a former bus that has been converted. It has been converted into a food bank that goes to 17 locations. And Nourish has bought a second one that goes into activity in April. And we have people who come in and we say traveling light. They are homeless. And the one thing that they can do and what they choose, the foods they choose, are things like hot dogs that they can prepare over an open fire. Literally, if you have an open fire, you can have a pot and you can boil it. And we have offered some utensils to them. Most of them have a pot with a lid. And so I have to tell you, the Salvation Army was pleased with this product. Nourish was. They say, this is perfect.
Excellent. I appreciate that answers. Thank you, Sally.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions for Sally before we tell them thank you very, very much and we move into our program with Richard Clark? No, Sally, thank you very, very much. I think that was pretty informative, and I know I'll plan to be there and help in some way. Maybe I could sit at the end of the table and put stickers on the boxes, huh? Since I'm a senior citizen, you know.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Well,
You're welcome to stay, listen to Richard's presentation if you'd like.
Sure.
Council on Legislation.
we'd love to.
Okay, then. Thank you. So, Richard, while you're let's see, can't remember how to make your picture bigger than everyone else's. So we'll let it go.
Don't worry about that.
So
Before I start, I have a question for you guys, if I might. How many of you are new Rotarians? How many of your club members are new Rotarians?
Actually, very few. We have only 3 new. We have 19 returning, 3 new, and 3 transfers. And that was the goal of this club, was to bring back Rotary.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah,
so the reason I asked that is,
I was going to introduce you properly.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So Richard Clark is a past district governor, and he's been a Rotarian for more than 30 years. He has served in several capacities at the district and zone level, including 7070 in Southern Ontario as the district governor back in 2003. Oh, that's a year before me, Richard. Wow.
Okay. Same era.
Zone 22 membership officer, the Rotary Foundation annual giving officer, Zone 22 regional Rotary Foundation coordinator, and as well a Zone 24, Rotary Public Information Coordinator. Richard served for 8 years on the TRF Canada board, 4 years as president, and continues to serve as an advisor to that board. He is currently the COL, the Council on Legislation rep for our District 5020. He's the District Rotary Leadership Institute coordinator, the Zone 25 Endowment and Major Gifts officer, and is serving as the president of the Strathcona Sunrise Rotary Club. In addition to his Rotary involvement, he is a vice president of the Comox Valley Airport Commission, president of Dawn to Dawn Action on the Homeless Society, Sally. Richard is a charter member of the Rotary Bequest Society, a Paul Harris Society member, and a Rotary major donor. I did not know you were on the Homeless Society, Richard. Wow. So with that, I'd like to have Richard go ahead and present his program.
All right. Okay. So we'll see if this, so I wanted to say, I've been meaning, I have never done a makeup at an E-Club. So it's been on my list. And when I heard you guys had been formed, I thought, well, that's perfect. I will do that one of these days. But this is my first time, and I've not presented on Zoom before. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, and we'll see if we can make it work. And Bill will talk me through we did a trial run here a few minutes ago. So I'll see if I can do this. So I think I have to press that. Oh, now I need to get,
have your PowerPoint loaded up on your desktop and ready to go.
Yeah, now my problem is I got a full screen here.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I can't see. If I hit gallery view, no, that won't help.
I'm
going to exit full screen. That'll work. Sorry.
Yeah.
Now I get my PowerPoint up, and then, whoops, that didn't quite work. Bear with me, guys. Where did that?
If you run your cursor up and down, sometimes that the taskbar at the bottom will pop up for you.
So I'll try that. Share. Oh, there we go. Share
and a little green suitcase. There you go.
And now to get it bigger,
yeah.
maybe you just bear with me, guys.
Yep.
Slideshows. There we go.
Excellent.
All right. Okay. So I begged, borrowed, and stolen slides. I actually thought there would somewhere be on Rotary.org a really neat, professionally put together slide deck on the Council on Legislation, but there isn't. So for those of you who are returned to Rotary, for those of you who are new to Rotary, the Council on Legislation is Rotary's legislative body. It meets once every 3 years. The last one was in 2016, which is where this slide was taken from. The next one will be in April of next year. But So this is just going to be a bit of a review, but I thought I would put it in context. So we know we've got 1.2 million Rotarians. We've had 1.2 million Rotarians forever, just not the same people. We've got something like 34,000 clubs or so around the world. And as you know, we're divided up into districts. There's 500 plus, I think 540 some these days. It varies. We have the districts clustered into zones. We've got 34 zones, of which we're District 5020, and 9 other districts are members of Zone 25, which goes from Port Hardy, which is on the north end of Vancouver Island, where I live, down to Reno and San Francisco and area at the south end. Then there's another zone called Zone 26, that runs from there effectively down to the US-Mexican border. And the zones are paired. So there are 34 zones. They're paired into 17 sets of pairs. And from each of those sets of pairs, every year there is a RI director. So the board of directors is made up of those 17, plus the RI president and the president-elect, and as a non-voting member, the general secretary of Rotary. Off to your left on the screen is the Rotary Foundation of Trustees, and there's 15 of them plus the general secretary. So they have to be at arm's length and are, but we talk about one Rotary, and they work in collaboration with the Rotary Board of Directors, but they do have to be at arm's length according to U.S. charity laws around foundations. Up in the right-hand corner is where you see the Council of Legislation / COLCOR. So the Council on Legislation, Council on Resolutions. Those representatives, that body represents the districts when it's selected. And so it's totally independent from the RI Board of Directors. So I'll go to the next slide. So what does the council do? Well, it's kind of like our own Congress. So as I said, it meets once, it's held every 3 years, meets for 1 week, sometimes only 4 days, every 3 years. And the intent and purpose is to provide Rotary with a vehicle so that we can formally adapt and change things as we need to. Rotary is really a federation of all those 34,000 plus Rotary clubs. For those of you who are involved in franchises, it's kind of like a franchise. It's closer to some of the co-op franchises like OK Tire, where the board of directors of OK Tire is drawn from the actual tire stores themselves. So Rotary is a little bit like that, but it's a body that can actually come together, consider change, debate that change, and actually make some recommendations, make some decisions with respect to the RI statutory documents, which I'll come to in a moment. I'll talk a bit about the composition. So there's one voting representative chosen from each Rotary district, chosen by the district itself, and there's one alternate chosen from that district. In our case, in District 5020, when the district was last selecting a Council of Legislation representative, the district chose past district governor Rose Bowman, and as many of you will be aware, sadly, Rose lost her fight with cancer around this time last year, actually, and I had been named as the alternate. So with Rose's sad passing, I became the Council on Legislation representative, and the district named Joanne Krogan, our past district governor from last year, as the alternate. So voting reps must be a member of a club, and should have, there are circumstances where it doesn't have, should have served prior to council as an officer of Rotary International, which is long speak for saying has been a district governor. So those are the voting representatives on the Council on Legislation, and then there, as the slide shows, a whole bunch of non-voting members on the council and who will be at that council meeting. So the Council on Legislation, we've split the function, but the Council on Legislation it has the power to change and make enactments with respect to the RI Constitution, the RI bylaws, and the RI standard constitution and bylaws for Rotary clubs. Rotary clubs can choose to have different bylaws, but not a different constitution. If there's going to be an amendment to the RI Constitution, it has to pass by a 2/3 majority in that council. So here's a picture of the council. This is probably the 2016 council. So you've got 540 some representatives from each district speaking their native language, but there are translators into, I think, about 8 different languages. You can see some folks have got their earphone sets on, they're listening to the translation. Somebody gets selected at the chair, and Rotary selects someone to chair and someone else is a vice chair of the council. So the year I was on the council, the chair was John Germ. And I've forgotten for the moment who the vice chair was. So they chair the meetings. They have legal advisors up at the front with them, and they have a couple of folks from Rotary's own Rotarians from Rotary's own Constitution and Bylaws Committee there that are providing advice and that the chair can call upon. So that's a lot of people in one room. And what has happened is they will have received, before they arrived, some months before they arrived in Chicago, all of the enactments, and when this council was meeting, all of the resolutions for their consideration, and they can be quite a number. You can have the council and the resolutions used to number in the hundreds, and the bylaws could number in the tens, right? If your district was a district that had proposed an enactment, then you as a council representative would have an opportunity to speak to that enactment. There will be other people in the room who may be supportive and may be opposed to it, and there will be an opportunity, some limited opportunity, to make very short and brief presentations one way or the other, and then the vote will get called. So here are the voting calls. Cards rather. So everybody holds up the card in the room and they get counted. I think they've been trying some electronic voting as well at recent councils, but they didn't when the one I was at back in 2007. The green one is a positive vote. The red is a negative vote. As the slide says, the yellow is someone who wants to actually speak. And I, for the life of me, cannot remember what the blue one was for. I don't remember using it. So I wanted to give you an example of the kind of thing that comes as an enactment to the Council on Legislation. So I took one deliberately from the 2013 Council. The enactments to be considered by the council can come from clubs. They have to be approved by their district, and they can land on the council's footstep or in their binder that they get ahead of time, or they can come from either the board of directors of Rotary International or the trustees. This is an amendment. This is an enactment because our dues are our RI dues are set in the bylaws. So this would have undoubtedly been tabled by the board of directors of Rotary, requesting that, as you can see, a $1 increase in the dues over those 3 years over that period of time. And they also had an amendment at the same time to reduce the minimum number that clubs had to pay down to 10 members. They removed that requirement. There had been a requirement that you had to have at least 10 members that you were paying for, or you had to pay for 10 members even if you didn't have 10. Anyway, they removed that. So that was the enactment that was considered and was actually approved by the Council on Legislation. Council on Resolution. So as I said, there were several hundred resolutions that would end up at the Council on Legislation. So when I served in 2007, to use that as an example, so what would happen is that you had all these resolutions to consider, you had the enactments to consider, you had to try to have time to actually debate them, and you had 4 days to do it in. it was kind of a mission impossible. So Rotary has a review committee, and a number of us were making all kinds of suggestions about how we could improve the process. In the end of the day, they decided that they would actually change the process and have the council have the resolutions considered by the Council on Legislation rather than every 3 years, every year. And that proposal to do that was taken as an enactment to the Constitution, to the 2016 Council, the last Council where it was approved. So we now, those of us that are chosen as Council on Legislation representatives have 2 jobs. One will be to consider resolutions every year, and one will be to consider the enactments at the triannual, how would you say that? Anyway, the every 3-year Council on Legislation. So a resolution is a request of the RI board or the trustees of the foundation. It's kind of, here's something we'd like you to think about, here's something we'd like you to do, but there's no compulsion. The trustees and the board of directors can choose to accept that request, that resolution, or not. They cannot change RI's constitutional documents. And this is kind of building on what already existed, and that was that a club or a district can make a direct submission to the board at any time as a petition. So you can petition the board to deal with an issue that you have, and the board is obliged to put it on its agenda for its next board meeting, but they're not obliged to do anything with it. And that right still exists, even though we've now got council on resolutions that will meet every year. So the members of the council are exactly the same as the members of the Council on Legislation. So we now are given a 3-year term, and so you serve on the Council of Resolutions for 3 years, and then into that for 3 years, and then what becomes effectively the 4th year, in essence, is the Council on Legislation, and you serve on that council, or your alternate does. And then you're finished and the district appoints somebody new. So it's the same kind of cast of characters, only the Council on Legislation as Council on Resolutions have a vote, and then there's a bunch of non-voting members that are involved in the process to make sure it works. So these are things that a resolution is something that doesn't affect the enactments or the Constitution or the bylaws, but it can affect the program. So here was one from last year requesting the IRI board to consider establishing a Rotary International Youth Service Day. So that's the kind of thing that you'll get. I wanted to stop for a moment and just remind you of RI's policy document. So we have what, Rotary has acronyms like everybody else. We call it MAP or MOP. Actually, it's MOP, not MAP, come to think of it. Anyway, the Manual and Procedure. So the Manual of Procedure has the RI bylaws and Constitution and the club standard bylaws and Constitution in it. So that's kind of the reference document in terms of our constitutional body. Then there is something called the Rotary Code of Policy, and these are all on the Rotary.org website. I sometimes find it easier to use Google to find something. We've improved the website, but not the search engine on it. Anyway, the Rotary Code of Policy are the decisions that the board has made over the years. So it goes way back in history, and it's constantly updated as the board of directors makes decisions between and at its annual general meeting. So if they're changing a policy, it might be that they make a decision around who's eligible to, Rotary has a bunch of committees. So on a variety of things, and they might decide that they want to change how frequently a committee meets. So the Code of Policy may say the committee on the Committee on the Council of Legislation shall meet every year. They might decide, well, that committee only needs to meet every 3rd year because the council only meets every 3rd year. if that was a decision of the board, that would replace in that code of policy whatever was there before. So it's kept up to date. Currently, it gets updated after every board meeting if there are any significant changes to the code of policy. So you can look at that at any time to see what the policy is on anything. And similarly, there's one for the foundation as well. So there's a code of policy for the foundation. So this is where the trustees have made decisions around the Rotary Foundation program. So if they were tweaking one of the grant programs, that would be in the code of policy. If they were tweaking who was eligible to be an ambassador or a Peace Scholar, that would be in the code of policy. So they're the prime documents to look to. So the resolutions could be proposals to the Board of Trustees or to the Board of Directors to change some policy that's in those policy documents. I'll talk a little bit about resolutions because we're in a time frame where we can propose resolutions. So last year was the first year that the Council on Legislation acted as a Council of Resolution in a separate time frame. So resolutions could be proposed by clubs. They have to be endorsed by the district, and then they're forwarded to Rotary International, to the General Secretary. And there's some criteria, and I'm going to go through a little bit of that. So there have to be two parts to a resolution. One is kind of a preamble. There are sort of the whereases, right? So and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And then it has to have a section that says, okay, so whereas this be it resolved that this be done. It has to relate to a matter within Rotary's current program framework. So you couldn't put forward a resolution, if you put forward a resolution that said, be it resolved that Rotary get involved in gaming, that would consider to be outside the program framework and would be rejected and would not be considered. And then in addition to these two parts, having a preamble and having the kind of the action part, there also has, when it goes forward from the district to RI, it must have a purpose, an effect clause, and a financial impact assessment clause, and I'll just show you that. So here's an example of a successful resolution from last year, this first year. So this came from one of the Rotary clubs and through one of the districts in India, who essentially are requesting that the Rotary's annual theme, the presidential theme, be translated into Hindi. And then this was kind of the purpose and effect clause that they had to go with it. So they just said, hey, there's 1.3 billion of us. And of course, as we all know, a whole bunch of Rotarians in India. And so that was their request. That's sort of the rationale for the request. And the financial impact, they said, well, this isn't really going to have isn't going to cost you much to do the translation, so it doesn't have much of a financial impact. So in any event, that was the kind of resolution, and that passed. So for this year, and I'm bringing this forward because we're in that time frame. So the resolutions have to first come from a club, so any club can propose a resolution. It needs to be submitted because we have some time frames to work with. So we need to be able to consider these at the district conference at the beginning of May. So we've put a deadline that clubs need to get any proposed resolutions to Joanne and I by the middle of April, so that we can have a look at them, see whether and make sure that they've met the criteria they're supposed to meet, so that they can be ready to be voted on we've set some time aside, at the AGM part of the district conference on May 5th for consideration of them. Then we have to submit those to Rotary within 6 weeks of that meeting, and in any event, they have to be into Rotary by the 30th of June. And then Rotary's lawyers and policy folks and advisors will look at the resolutions as they've been proposed, and there may be some toing and froing between the authors of the resolution and the folks in Evanston. In any event, they'll get a package of the resolutions together, and they'll be published on the RI website on October 15th for everybody to see. What we did last year and what we'll do this year is that Joanne and I will send an email out to all of the club presidents saying, hi folks, the resolutions are published. Have a look at them. If you have any particular perspective on them that you'd like to share with us, send that to us, and we'll put a date, probably the 30th of October on that. And then Joanne and I will have and the district governor will have or the district governor's rep will have a conversation about those, just to see what we think. And then I have, as the other council on legislation reps have until November 15th to go in and do an up or down vote electronically. And then RI publishes those, will publish those results on or about November the 20th, again on the RI website for everybody to see. As I mentioned before, there are petitions, so this is a request you can make to the board of directors at any time from a club. The advantage of the petition is you can act now. So you know, if you've missed these deadlines around a resolution or something comes up and it just, you know, you need to deal with it now, you can do that. The advantage of the resolution is that by going through this process, so there were, I think, 37 resolutions submitted last year that made it all the way through to be considered. Less than half of them passed. And again, they're just essentially recommendations to the board. But if there's a whole bunch of support for a resolution that you've got from the council reps from all over the world, so you've got global support, that sends a pretty strong message to the RI directors of the Board of Trustees. Oh, this is something we better pay some attention to. Even if we may not, as a board or Board of Trustees, agree with it, this is clearly signaling a concern or an interest on part of Rotarians around the world. So it has that extra oomph to it that a sole petition from a single club doesn't have. So in summary, there's one voting representative per district, and they serve on both the Council of Legislation and now this kind of separated Council on Resolutions process. We consider resolutions on an annual basis. We can consider amendments to the RI Constitution every third year, and for this council that's happening in 2019, the deadline for resolutions was at the end of December 2017. So all the ones that can be considered are in. As I said, the clubs can petition the board at any time, and you've got the constitutional documents. So that's a quick walkthrough of the Council on Legislation and the Council on Resolutions, your constitutional body. I am delighted to be serving as the 5020 Council on Legislation delegate representative. So that's my quick overview. Questions?
Okay, you want to unshare your screen now?
Oh, of
Richard?
course. Sorry.
We can see each other a little better.
Stop share. There
we go. There we go. Please, I mean, I always have questions, right? But I want others to ask their questions first. Okay. I have an advantage in that I served as the Council on Legislation representative in the 2013 council, and things were a little different back then. But Richard, I wanted to ask you about, okay, you had mentioned the deadlines, but when does this enactment process start for the district? When do we, as clubs, begin the process of actually writing what we would like to see as a change in bylaws or a constitutional amendment?
Okay, so at this point, all of the deadline, this sounds like hard to believe, but the deadline for the 2019 Council on Legislation was December 2017.
Huh.
So,
didn't hear much about it.
So, well, we put stuff out, got stuff out to the clubs. So part of course, what happened was with Rose's passing, and by the time, you know, things got worked through. But last fall, we did put out information to all the club presidents. We had stuff on the website saying when stuff had to get in. But that's about as much time as we had, that Joanne and I had to do anything, right? Because um,
Right.
because of Rose's death, right? So,
Right.
yeah. So we didn't have any. We had a whole process. We had to have a whole process for the district considering those, and we were going to have to do a district-wide electronic vote to do that. But we didn't actually get any proposed amendments from the district.
Have they shortened the time frame, Richard? Because when I was
Yeah.
there, you had almost 3 years. I mean, you put it out. You had to get all your input in by December. I think it was October, November, December, and then the following January, you received your booklet. You studied it, and then in April you were in Evanston doing the voting. But it seems to me we had a good 2.5 years.
Oh yeah, they've
together.
changed. Yeah, yeah, you're quite right, and I was quite surprised. They've really changed it up. So.
Another question I have for you is, one of the things they changed is when I was back there, we almost had this district almost had a resolution passed or enactment passed. We had more than 50% of the vote, but not 2/3.
Yeah.
Was to change and quit doing a change in the annual theme, but make the annual theme always service above self. And at that time, the lawyers back there really scrambled, right? And then this last session, I noticed what came out of the 2016 session was an arbitrary, something came out where the board of directors can almost arbitrarily say, oh, that proposal's not appropriate. No justification, no rationale behind it. Just say, well, we don't think it's appropriate. Did anyone challenge that when you were there?
Yeah.
And did they ask for a definition of what's appropriate or any criteria?
No, I don't remember that happening.
Okay.
I do remember. Well, I don't remember what the issue was, but it was an issue that the board was not enamored with. And I'm at the council. There were some of the past presidents have a right to be there,
right?
And 3 or 4 of the past presidents got up to argue against it. And I honestly don't. I think we passed it anyway, but yeah. So I've not run into what you've run into, but okay. I'll look into that. That's a curious thing.
Yeah, because it seems to me it's very arbitrary. They can just say, "Oh, that's not appropriate." And so my question is what happens to the future value of the council on legislation?
Yeah.
There ought to be a written criteria. And maybe, I don't know if that's probably more of an enactment proposal than a resolution. Anyway, what are the questions? I've got my questions out of the way. Please ask Richard questions.
It's not the most, legislation is not the most exciting stuff in the world. For those of you who are relatively new, it took, because that council only meets once every 3 years, it took 15 years to get rid of the gender issue in Rotary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So.
Yep.
One of the interesting things that does happen is what I experienced, and I don't know whether you experienced this, Bill, because many people were working in, for example, in English, which is their second or third language, and they were arguing over words.
Oh yeah.
And didn't necessarily actually have a really good grasp of what the word meant in English, right? So, so that tends to happen, right?
Yeah, I remember that because what the languages were English, French, Japanese, Korean. I can't remember what all the rest, maybe Norwegian, but different languages, there were different words that were more appropriate for what was trying to be said. And that was difficult. I remember that. Yeah, a lot of wordsmithing went on. Yeah. Well, Richard, if there's no more questions for you, I want to thank you very much for that tonight. Like you said, legislation is not exciting, but the thing is, I think it's important that all Rotarians understand that there is this council, that we do have representation here in the district, and that we do have a voice if we wish to exercise it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's something that's, as a new e-club that you're experiencing, there's something barrier or something that's kind of getting in the way, resolution and or a petition is a way of yeah, trying to get that addressed. So
I believe the 2016, actually, although we call ourselves E-Club, and it was funny because RI told us to call ourselves E-Club, but the 2016 council said there's no such thing as a distinction between a regular Rotary Club, a Passport Club, or an E-Club. They're all Rotary. But yet, when I told Rotary what we were trying to charter, they says, "Oh, you're an E-Club," and put it.
change is hard and takes time.
It does. It does. Well, Richard, thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome. I'll see some of you in Tacoma in May.
Yes, or May. Yes, May. My goodness, is almost here. Okay, we're at that point where we need to wrap up the meeting. So, but I want to let everyone know that if you know of a program, we're in need of a program for April 15th, May 3rd, and June 21st. We could, if we get the budget done and the board approves it, we may be able to use April 15th as a discussion on a club assembly and discuss that in detail as to where our money is being allocated. And in addition to that, what kind of support do we want to provide to global grants or community grants? I'll put an email out to the whole club and see what their preference is on that. I also know that it was recommended that we have a program on elder care, the coming issues of elder care, both in Washington State and in Vancouver Island, because the two countries have different regulations, and there's, of course, probably similar sets of problems. So I'm going to try to get one of those, but we still need some input on different programs. So with that said, does anyone else have anything for the good of the order tonight? Okay, if not, thank you all again for a great meeting. There were 4 people here that should have been here tonight. One of them was going to be our member profile, so I'll schedule her for our next meeting. That was Deborah Kovacs. So everyone, thank you very much, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Okay, bye now.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.
What are we doing?